Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another edition of our Rant series. Today, we've got two special guest co-hosts that are joining us yet again, and I picked out a really good rant for these guys to join me on, and I think we're going to have a lot of fun with this. So everybody from Muse Podcast, welcome once again, Craig and George Sybert. What's happening, guys? Haven't seen you in a while.
I know. We got a big issue coming up for us, a big episode coming up for us. So
we've been prepping our podcast for weeks now, so yeah, it's been a little bit.
Weeks. It must be something special then.
With the holidays and whatever too, but Craig can clue you in what we got going on.
Yeah, it's we're at episode 50. We kind of call it a benchmark, and we're going to be slightly cliche. We're going to do a 50, but it's going to be 50 things in music that have influenced us, or 50 things in music that we find important to us. Could be a song, could be an instrument, could be a concert we went to, totally open to as long as it involved music. So the lists are a little bit hard to put together.
So without getting too deep into it, how far into your 50 are both of you guys as of today?
George?
I'm 20-ish, 20, yeah. I think 22, 25, somewhere.
I have 22, exactly.
And when's taping day?
Sure.
Okay, so there's no set day, obviously.
Not
you guys
yet.
Are far enough away. Gotcha. All right. Well, at the end of the episode, we'll talk a little bit more about that and your podcast and all that. And, it sounds like something that people will want to check out. I think that would be a lot of fun. It's a great topic, really good topic. So today's topic, the reason why I got you guys here today, I have been thinking for a while, and it's come up in some other shows that I've done about the MTV years.
It's come up for us too.
Yeah. And I decided to title this rant, Video Killed the Radio Star, the MTV Years. And I think that the longer we continue to move away from that time period where MTV ruled and videos ruled and music was all about the videos that were released and on MTV or VH1 or wherever you saw them, for me, as I look back on those times, I can't help but think that it just kind of took away from what the music was all about. And I thought that would be a really good topic for a rant between the three of us, because we all lived through it. We survived it. And now here we are all these years later, and you kind of look back on it and we're like, what the hell was going on in those 15 years or so, or whatever it was? Maybe it wasn't even that long. I mean, realistically, it's probably less than that. So I figured we just start BSing about this and see where it goes. And George is laughing, so I'm going to have George throw some intro comments here. Yes.
Intro comments. I am slightly younger than Craig and slightly even more younger than you, not by much. So we're roughly in that same era, but MTV was monumental as far as I couldn't afford to go out and buy a bunch of different albums when I was 12, 13, 14, 15 years old necessarily. I didn't have a job, couldn't get a job, wasn't old enough to have a job. My dad
couldn't go to concerts, right?
Right. And my hey dad, will you buy me the new Anthrax album? Go do something else, But I stayed up late on Saturday night and caught Headbangers Ball. So my view is maybe slightly less I'd hate to say epidemic wise, but I remember the early videos. I mean, from the Buggles on, Video Killed the Radio Star was the first one they played. And I mean, Video Killed the Rock Star, the Radio Star, and radio has pretty much cannibalized itself. I mean, we've talked ad nauseum about that too, but I think the biggest thing with MTV was it turned it more about the look than the sound. I think it killed a lot of great bands that they couldn't sell because of their look. And they made a lot of pretty people on TV that shouldn't have been making music. I mean, that whole face for radio thing.
Oh, let's hear an example.
Warrant is a huge example for me.
You didn't like Warrant? What? What?
See?
You didn't like Warrant? Are you
That's not what I said. I said they shouldn't have been on. They should have been on TV, not on the radio. They were pretty, but I think it hit right at the cusp of hair metal and exploded that genre of music
because of the images.
Because of the images, because of the look. And
So not to derail us, but we're here. We are already at that point. So if there was no MTV and there was no video explosion, would any of those hair bands, okay, the commercial metal bands or whatever you want to call them, I know people hate that term,
right,
would the majority of them ever has gotten as big as they did?
1/20th at best.
Okay.
Would Aquanet still be in business?
There you go. That's another part of it, right?
Or spandex. Yes.
But it's a really good point. I mean, so if you it was 81, right, for MTV.
I think
so. 81 is when MTV hit this. That's when their big release was, middle of the year, and some of the bands really hadn't started coming in. The hair bands that we're talking about, like Warrant and Poison and Winger and all those types of bands like that. And you're right, it was right on the cusp of that, because in 81 you had albums like Moving Pictures by Rush, Killers by Iron Maiden, Fair Warning by Van Halen,
Back in Black.
Actually, for
a
those
little bit before, yeah.
There was About the Rock came out, right?
That's right. Yeah,
almost the same time.
Well, like Bark at the Moon too, probably. Ozzy.
Bark at the Moon, Ozzy.
Well, no, actually, a little bit later.
It was Diary.
Yep.
Diary
okay, Madman. Okay, yes. So
Too Fast for Love by Motley Crue. Tattoo You by Rolling Stones, which they were kind of on their way gone to, and then High and Dry by Def Leppard. I'm just naming a couple of I looked this up to see what albums released that year, and to see how that change happened. And I 100% agree with you guys. I really don't think a lot of these bands would have made. I know we're not going to dissect hair metal, but if you look at the bands that were hair metal bands at that time, the ones that I think were the better bands that weren't as good looking, Cinderella, didn't get as much play as bands like Winger and Warrant.
Or Bon Jovi.
Yep.
But those bands you just named were established bands.
Oh, no, I was just saying what was...
Yes, but I mean, Iron Maiden, Ozzy Osbourne, Def Leppard, Rolling Stones, they're established bands. Do you think MTV killed those?
Well, that's what I'm saying. So you fast forward to 86. Let's give it 5 years that MTV's been on the air.
Right.
The top 20, you don't get to a rock band, quote unquote rock band, Bon Jovi, until 30 on the hit list of that year. What do you end up with at that year? Whitney Houston, Eddie Money, Survivor, Mr. Robert Palmer, Addicted to Love, Whitney Houston, Greatest Love of All.
Great video though.
Pet Shop. There's where I'm going with it. 5 years, man. And you're talking about the bands that were in the top 25. One of those I just mentioned are gone from that. I mean, it is totally flipped.
I think
still selling records, but not at the level that they were at the beginning of the decade.
But selling records and popular. Are we arguing that?
Still popular.
I think it probably hurt the. Are we going to use it? I think it hurt the ugly bands as much as it helped.
We've already kind of said it. You can say it out loud.
I'm just going down that path. I think it hurt the ugly bands more than it helped the good-looking ones, because even it didn't matter that they played Warrant's Cherry Pie video 30 times an hour. The music was trash to me. I mean, they were. I think it forced this cookie cutter. We've used the term watered down. It watered rock down to the point of delirium. I mean, it was very, very few bands of any substance. There were a handful of really talented singers, songwriters, performers that still hold water today. I mean, you can pick, Bon Jovi's kind of, their own entity. Def Leppard, but I mean, like bands like Tesla, maybe. I mean, they got a new album coming out. I've heard recently. They're a handful of these bands that, but I mean.
But see, Tesla is a perfect example of what we're talking about. Tesla released a handful of great albums really good albums around that time period between the mid 80s and the early 90s.
Right.
They released some videos. Nobody cared because they didn't have that look, because their videos didn't have half naked women jumping around, guys chugging beers and breaking bottles and doing all sorts of crazy shit, because that's what Guns N' Roses was doing. That's what Motley Crue was doing. That was Poison was doing. I mean, all those bands, right? So I think that Tesla wanted to be more musical and wanted, you know what, they did these more performance style videos because that's what they were all about. And the general public didn't latch onto those because why? Because their videos didn't tell a crazy story or have all this eye candy and all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, there's a lot of bands that fall into that bracket.
Sorry, I didn't mean to overstep. I think that's why those bands lasted, though, because they didn't give a damn about the videos. They cared about the music.
It's all about the music.
Poison had like 3 albums in a row that were mega hits,
and they still suck.
But hold on, that's where I was going with before. I've got an affinity for the first album. The rest of the stuff was crap. You're right, but that's where I was going with that, though, is their concerts were selling out because of the videos. So I'm talking about popularity. When I say popularity, I'm saying about what did it do for them? Because if they're making great music like Tesla, you know, I'd love to see some numbers. I'd have to look up some numbers, but I would bet money that after MTV started 2 or 3 years into it, Poison was selling out a lot more shows than Tesla was selling out.
Of course they were. Because Tesla, to my knowledge, were never headliners throughout that whole period. Never.
Yeah. And as George said, better music.
Oh, yeah, undeniably. Because, I mean, if the 2 CDs are laying on a table, Tesla or Poison, I'm picking Tesla every time.
It's funny, though, you mentioned the partying and you know, breaking bottles and stuff. All I could go back and watch the video for Cry Tough by Poison. That's exactly what the entire video is them partying and at the pool.
I mean, but we use Motley Crue. You're rough. Well, let's say Craig's a fan, even if it's casual.
I am.
Okay. So
he knows better to mention my name there.
I know.
Right. Well, to be fair, there are songs or bands, or at least parts of some of these songs that these even garbage bands like Poison have made that are palatable, to say the least. Like where you really want to, in the what was it? Like their Poison's first hit.
Talk Dirty to Me.
Talk Dirty to Me.
Talk Dirty to Me. I mean, that was a palatable rock song. I mean, it had a great, you know.
There's a couple off that first album that are borderline okay. Yeah.
Okay, I gotta say palatable. But like I said, when you pick Motley Crue, okay, Craig's big thing is the first album, 2 albums of Motley Crue were raw. They were better. They were. I
was a fan at the time.
Exactly. Girls hit. I completely turned them off and never went back, never listened, never gave anything other than what stumbled onto the radio another shot.
Because to me, right at that time is when Motley Crue decided it was more about the image, more about doing the videos than it was with putting out a solid, really good heavy metal record.
Exactly.
Or whatever you want to call them. Right?
And they had already proven that they could. And I say that was the MTV, you know, we talked about this. That's the MTV factor for me. Is it took some bands that were borderline that could have been, I think Motley Crue could have been better. They went more with the image, the partying, the drugs, the women, the woohoo, we're on TV, to, you know, it was about the music, and then it went to about the visual. It went, you know, the sound lost character because they were focusing on, you know, what was being seen rather than what was being heard.
Right.
I think that pushed some bands like Tesla to the back, and it pushed bands like Motley Crue to the front, just by, you know, sheer will, I guess, if you want to call it that. But that's still, I think MTV is a visual establishment of the radio blockade. You know, they still play the same songs on the radio, and they play the exact same video. Craig, we used to race home V32. Remember there was like this cheesy, like almost local radio or local TV channel that at 4:00 played music, like an hour of music videos.
Well, hold on. Specific types of music. It was rock and metal. It was Wasp, Wild Child, and all the, you know, the really, but
Rat.
Rat.
All of those hair metal bands, whatever you want to call them. It was
Well,
99.9% of that.
So that's 81, but bands were making videos before that.
Sure.
Well, they were making artsy videos. I mean, like Queen. Okay, Queen had a bunch of videos. There's all sorts of bands that did videos sporadically during the 70s and late 70s. Where were they being played? That's what I don't remember, because again, I was still a kid.
Right, but I think a lot of those was like concert footage too, mostly.
Some of them, yeah. Some actually went and actually created videos, but you're right. There was a lot of either concert videos, or they would take clips from them playing on Don Kirshner's rock concert or the Midnight Special or something like that, and they would go use those as like promo videos, and that was basically to promote the songs, right? Or the albums. But I want to kind of go back a little bit, because both of you guys hit it on a little bit, and I wanted to give some perspective here from someone who was listening to like FM rock radio in the very late 70s into the early 80s. So video killed the radio star. So radio, in like when I was growing up, 77, 78, 79, FM rock radio played like they had more than 100 songs, right? Like it is now, if it's even 100 songs. I mean, they would play tracks from new albums. They would promote new albums by new bands and legacy bands. And the scope of what they played was way more than it is now. And I think that once the video format came in and the Buggles basically kind of said it all, right? All of a sudden, because I remember it like it was yesterday. I remember like one day I would turn on my local FM station here, and I'd be like, oh my God, they played this new song by this band. Well, this is great. This is great. Then all of a sudden, a year later, that all stopped. All of a sudden, it's like, wow, they just played Stairway to Heaven 2 hours ago. Or, and all the notable suspects. And then all of a sudden it changed, and radio wasn't playing anything new anymore.
Well, they had Casey Kasem. Yeah. Well, they had Casey Kasem top 100 every weekend.
Right. And in many cases, you heard different songs coming into that top 100 all the time.
And I mean, the pool from which they were gathering songs wasn't nearly as deep as it is now. And we've got
but they play much more. Yeah.
Yeah. But they've got even, a lot less. I think that's, yes, I mean, in and of itself is, Craig and I have been threatening this rant for since we started our podcast. It's about, I still think it's about the money. They don't want to pay they've already paid the royalties for Stairway to Heaven, to use your example, 1,000 times over. So just play it again. They've already paid, Leonard Skinner enough for Sweet Home Alabama. Just play it again. And I think, behind you is a wall of sound. There you have thousands of CDs behind you that have at least one, maybe two good tracks minimum that could be drawn from. And that's just on your wall behind you, Pete, that they could draw from. And they want none of that. They don't have who has time for a top 100 countdown when they've got to get their kids to soccer practice or whatever? They don't want to do it.
And it was the same thing with video. MTV did the exact same thing. An avenue I'd like to go down a little bit here, and there's a lot of avenues we could take. I'm also of the belief that not only did having an accepted popular video in rotation hurt some bands because they didn't give a shit to put all, and let me tell you something, it cost a lot of money to make these videos.
I was going to mention
a lot of bands who were probably should have been much bigger, but because they didn't fall in line with what everybody else was doing and spend a ton of money on a video to get played and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I was just reading Steve Lukather's autobiography, Steve Lukather, the guitar player from Toto. Right. And I was just reading I just finished it yesterday, an amazing book. And he talked a lot about how Toto, they had that huge album, Toto 4, Rosanna in Africa, and they did videos for those. But then, they never were comfortable with that. They were all about the music. And then they followed that up with another album. They didn't want to do all this glitzy MTV stuff. And you know what? Their careers suffered because they refused to kind of go down that avenue. The record labels, were like, oh, we don't have big enough hits on these albums you're putting out. We're not going to push your album, that sort of thing. I mean, we can name a ton of bands from that time period who were putting out great albums, but maybe, like Black Sabbath, the perfect example. They had a lot of lineup changes, but their sales started slipping. They weren't putting out videos, right? They weren't accepted on MTV. Blue Oyster Cult, you look at a lot of the thrash bands that really got big that era, Metallica, Megadeth, Anthrax, doing a lot of videos.
Yeah.
How about Overkill? How about Exodus? They weren't doing a lot of videos. Maybe you'd see them on Headbangers Ball, but that's about it,
Or
right?
on Beat 32.
Yeah. Motorhead, Sabotage, Fates Warning, all these bands that were more about the music, and they didn't want to do those stupid videos. And you know what? I think it hurt them.
I do too, because I'll beat you to it, Craig.
Yep.
Didn't Michael Jackson had a guy that did movies do the Thriller video? I mean, it was literally movie
spent a fortune on those videos.
To tag on to that, there wasn't a return on that money. It wasn't like they were going to get,
box office sales.
A number
help them sell concert tickets and sell records,
right?
And CDs,
and it was taking a chance. It was worse than playing the stock market at that point in time. I mean, you're going to put, I don't know what the Thriller video cost, but $1.5 million into something that you're going to hope you get money back for in the concert tickets. Now, in that case, it did, but like you mentioned, Pete, man, there is so many bands out there that, we lived in Tampa where Sabotage was kind of, pushed a lot because they were from that area and, towards that area and did a lot of recording in that area. So we happened to see some of those videos, and they were bad.
Oh yeah, they were. Yeah,
but the music
budget
was amazing. I mean, those guys were insanely good and never got notoriety because they probably 80. What was the first album? 83.
Or 84, something like 84? That. Yeah, Sirens. Yeah, it was pretty early.
Right when MTV was peaking. I mean, 81 to 85 or 86. The first 5 years were taken off, and we're going to change how things are done. And it's so funny that Buggles song was actually made in 1980, and that was the first video they played on there. How ironic is it that that's the first video they played on MTV?
It was choreographed. I'd swear to it.
So what?
But wait,
go ahead.
I want to blow Craig's mind real quick before we get too far away from it. Don't let Craig lie to you. We went down to the Sleazebees to be in their video in Ybor at the Ritz.
We were in it somewhere. I don't know.
What was the song? Screwed, Blued, and Tattooed.
Yeah.
Was the song by the Sleazebees that we went down to be in the crowd to
You remember when I asked to have that mute button, Pete? Can you put that mute button for George?
Don't let him lie to you.
I was in a Crocus video, if that means anything. Not very proud of that, but yeah.
We're kidding.
Well, I was just going to say, that's better than the Sleazebees. I mean,
well, but if you think about stuff like that, I mean, again, they spent a lot of money to do that. But that was concert footage they were using in that.
Yeah.
You can get away with, quote unquote, ugly people on stage when it's, a lot of smoke and everybody moving around and you blur the video and stuff. So maybe they were kind of getting sneaky on what they're, we're getting into the video stream. But there is such a really big correlation between MTV and videos and the radio and switching over. And Pete, you mentioned a few minutes ago about, you kind of remember that time frame where it was wide open, and then it narrowed down to a block of 50 songs that they're playing. What do you feel it was around the same time?
Oh, it had to be. Yeah. I mean, late 70s, early 80s. That's when it. I mean,
I don't seem to remember that turn on the radio until the late 80s, but I could be wrong. I was.
Well, I went to college. I went to college in 1984, and again, technology much less than it was now. So we really, in 1984, what we would do in the dorms or, off campus, wherever you happen to be living, you listen to your LPs or you played the radio. And I remember that the local rock radio station here all of a sudden was not playing the good stuff like they did just a couple of years before. And I remember we used to wait till Metal Shop. I don't know if you guys had that. It was a syndicated show. It was called Metal Shop. This was like the Headbangers Ball for FM radio, FM rock radio. And that was like once a week. And we would literally, all of, my friends who were metalheads, we would wait till Saturday night or whatever the hell night it was. I don't remember, for Metal Shop. And that's when they would play the really cool stuff. But then the rest of the week you're hanging out, you're trying to do your homework, you listen to WPDH and Sweet Home Alabama, Freebird, Stairway to Heaven, all the normal Hotel California, all the normal suspects. And I'm like, man, God, they don't play any new music anymore. So again, may not have been like that all around the country, but I noticed that around that time.
But I mean, there has to be some correlation. I mean, obviously, when hair metal started, we said this at the beginning. I really don't think it would have been near as big, and I honestly don't think the look would have went that far in that direction. I mean, Motley Crue was kind of jumping on that bandwagon, and a couple earlier
they were
bands,
leather pants and stuff.
Yeah,
I mean, it's early on too, but
to the extreme, like where Poison was, and where Winger and Warrant and all them went with that look, just would it have been that way if there was even MTV around?
Yeah, I don't know. And we're talking a lot about here the more heavier stuff, but like we can even, this discussion could be about like Mr. and Aha and all those kind of post new wave bands, Duran, all that kind of stuff. Even like Phil Collins and like what Genesis was doing, and I mean it really
that pushed a lot of pop bands out of the way too. I think.
Yeah, well, it helped usher them out. I mean, they were kind of on the outside anyways with hair metal coming in, but yeah, I think that. I mean, have you seen the guys in Duran Duran?
Well,
Robert Palmer.
They're it's to me it's like a like say like a Hall and Oates or something. I mean, they were late 70s, early 80s, and neither one of those guys are much to look at either. So I mean, but the music was
great. I mean, Hall and Oates was a lot of classic stuff there.
Yeah, was better, and they got. I would use the term forced out, because all the shitty bands that MTV decided to play was choreographed, because like you said, from the Buggles video, they just happen to have a video kill the radio star. Well, that's amazing. Bullshit. They knew that was a mile away coming. It was intent. I mean, we as music fans, as radio fans, as video fans, even, because I would wait till Saturday night for the Headbangers Ball, Metal Shop, or Headbangers Ball, whatever it was. I would wait to hear the kind of music I wanted to hear, because the radio wasn't playing it. MTV wasn't playing it till, from midnight till 4 a.m. on, Saturday night. So it was this.
And that's when you'd see your Slayer video or your, whatever, something that's got more meat to it, right? That you're not going to see at 4 o'clock drive time. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. And that's what I always, so then it turned me off of MTV, because they were promoting bands like Aha and, Mr. and those kind of cakey bands that I didn't want to listen to, because the radio was forcing it down my throat during the day. MTV was forcing it down my throat during the day. And it kind of, it pushed it, like we've used the term, into the underground. Metal has always been underground, but I think it made it infinitely worse putting those fancy pants on in prime time, because you couldn't turn on MTV without seeing Poison or Winger or any of those bands from to 91. I mean, I would even, Craig, use a 10-year span of video. Just what we keep saying, I think it killed it. It killed a lot of bands. It killed a lot of sound. I mean, I'm still, a closet 80s pop fan. I mean, I like some of that stuff, but only what I was force fed. The stuff that's radio played and popular, that MTV forced on everybody.
So here's a point. I got 2 points, 2 other avenues I want to take us down. So the first point plays off of what you just said. I'm going to pick a band here that one of their videos, actually 2 of their videos, was force fed to the entire universe for this over a course of a year and a half. Each song, good for what they are, but not representative of the band and their sound. And I think, based on recent events, and after I tell you who the band is, I'll explain what I'm talking about here. I think gave most people a misinterpretation of what they're all about as a group. I'm talking about Europe. I'm talking about the Final Countdown and Carrie, which, let me tell you something. I can't tell you how many people I've talked to, and I mentioned Europe, like, oh my God, that horrible band, Final Countdown. I never want to hear that song again. You know what? Those two songs have nothing to do with the rest of their albums and the rest of their songs. But unfortunately, because of MTV, that nobody in this country will ever take them seriously again.
Yeah.
How many other bands fall into that category? There were actually good bands that they played one video to death that really wasn't all about them, and that's that.
You said Final Countdown, and immediately I had the video in my head. I'd seen it enough times.
Yeah, of course.
That video just popped right in my head.
You want to know how cliched it is for me? I thought of the Geico commercial where they're talking about that dude's burrito. Seriously, that's how cliched it is now.
Well, I'm trying to think of another band though that videos representative differently.
Maybe. And while you're thinking, the reason why I brought them up just now is because they just announced the tour for this summer here in the States. That's going to be Foreigner, Kansas, and Europe. And I went on a couple message boards and Facebook pages where all these people were commenting and blah, blah. And so many people are like, oh, Europe, I'm going to stay out in the parking lot while they're on because I never need to hear the Final Countdown again. And I saw that type of comment so many times. And I'm like, you know what? I guarantee you, all those people who were saying that never heard any other song from them but that one, and probably maybe Rock the Night and Carrie. That's it. And their music overall doesn't sound anything like that.
No,
I actually mentioned this one earlier, but I would almost say Robert Palmer.
Yeah, because you know what? Those videos and both those songs kind of sound the same. His music was totally different than that.
Yeah, I would go with that one. Maybe would Blondie? Because I think the big ones I remember by her were, what was that? Heart of Glass,
Rapture.
No, there was one that she had that was really dance and poppy. What was the?
Call Me? No, that was
no. Later, it was kind of when MTV started. Tide is High.
Oh yeah.
Which had a funky video, but I would say to her probably the same way. I think if you look at her library of music before that, it was not what those songs were.
I would say maybe a little bit towards the end of MTV's cusp was like the Black Crowes, because they played one song, that the one video, maybe Jealous Again too. I guess they played that one or two songs. That's
nobody knows that. Everybody knows She Talks to Angels.
Well, that's what I mean.
Yeah, that's what I said. That's not them.
They played the dog crap out of it, and it's very much, you know.
And those first two albums of theirs, almost every song on both those albums are really strong.
Yes.
Yeah,
but you know, most people just gravitated towards what they remember seeing.
Exactly.
On MTV.
That'd be the only band I could, you know, off the top of my head that kind of falls.
Oasis?
No, they suck.
Well.
But look at Def Leppard too. Def Leppard's another good example. Whereas, you know, Pour Some Sugar on Me and those handful of other ones, you know, come on. Pyromania's got some great deep album cuts on there that the casual fan doesn't even bother to get to know, because all they remember are those like 3 or 4 big FM radio and
stereo album. Yeah,
it's kind of funny though, because as soon as you said it, all I thought of was the Me and My Wine video, which is like shot in somebody's apartment, you know, on a $2 budget of them just, you know, having a party. And but you're right though. I mean, that still is not really kind of what they were. Hysteria was changed who they were, but I think that also changed. What was that? 87?
Yeah, something like that
ish. So that was kind of at the height of MTV. So
probably.
How about the opposite? What bands would fit the opposite that made them?
I would say Motley Crue.
Well, but I mean, they kind of that everything they were playing with Motley Crue was kind of what their music was.
Quiet Riot for a couple of years.
Oh,
Bon Jovi, definitely. I think Bon Jovi is a perfect example.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So here's one. How about a video that absolutely ruined an artist? Billy Squier, Rock Me Tonight.
Yes. Yeah.
I don't know who in their right mind told him that that was the video to do, because that's a good song. And that video is like the worst pile of crap I have ever seen. He's prancing around with these. I mean, it's just, what was he thinking?
He was told to dance like that or something. He's even going on record to say that. And Billy Squire's got some great music, but that
absolutely
sunk that man's career.
It killed it.
His career. Yeah,
killed his career.
Yeah.
Totally killed his career.
That's probably, I don't know if he could eclipse that example. That's probably one of the best examples.
Well, you know, we talked about it before. This also before as well, but I had heard of Wasp. I had listened to a couple of their songs when I was, you know, hanging out and learning guitar. But around that time, they had a couple of videos come out, and I never heard from them again. Like, that was it. And the Wild Child video is so bad.
Yeah.
With the
I think a lot of those,
blades on
I think those low budget videos hurt a lot of bands, but they were trying to keep up with the Joneses. I mean, if your record label didn't back you, or they didn't think you were good enough, they didn't put it. So these guys that were sleeping in their van, you know, touring the Northeast or out West or whatever, they just did what they had to do. You know, they had some guy with, like, you know, a camcorder up on his shoulder, you know, following them around in the desert with, you know, they bought some $50 worth of fireworks in Tennessee and lit them off on a mountainside.
That's
and called it a music.
They grabbed their instruments and their drums and they set it up on a hillside and just shot it. There's a performance video,
no electricity, nowhere, just play it.
Right, exactly. I think that hurt a lot of bands.
It absolutely did.
They couldn't afford it. And I mean, not that Wasp was that great, but I mean that caliber of band that obviously had a record deal they made more than one album. They sold some albums.
Yeah, they did. They were pretty popular for a few years.
Yeah.
So I mean, but tell me a great Wasp video that you remember.
That's what I said.
Yeah, I know. And that's what I'm saying. But likewise, I was a huge Anthrax fan. None of their videos all sucked too. They were either performance videos or they were.
I like Madhouse.
Well, but it was it was a cheap video.
Oh yeah, it was. Yes.
Off the, you know, technically the second album or whatever, but it was a very low budget, you know.
But look what they had to compete against. I mean, you had Metallica putting out one.
Oh god.
Exactly.
I mean, it's, you know, I mean, that a lot of money was sunk into that, and that's a pretty cool video. And it's but
that's the difference. They were on Elektra, and Anthrax was on Atlantic. So, I mean, did Elektra think, well, we got Metallica, let's keep them here. Let's give them whatever they want. And they were cutting in, what is that, Johnny Got His Gun or whatever the movie they cut in through to the video.
Oh, yeah, the war film. Yeah.
Yeah, and, you know, Anthrax is some vacant house, you know, let's get a gurney and dance around, like, you know, with our eyelids flipped out and call it, you know, Madhouse video. It really was apples and oranges at that time, you know, especially with depending on how popular the band was. And as far as videos making a band more popular or killing their career, man, there's probably 100 of each if you actually sat down and thought about it. I mean, depending on what they played, because nobody had heard of the Buggles before or since. And they played one video, and they're forever known as, you know, the first video that was played.
Yeah, I think Judas Priest had a couple of videos that probably didn't help their career. Right around the time of like Turbo and whatnot, I think they were really cheesy, and I'm like, and then they did that Hot Rockin' video really early on. I'm like. I mean, they were still selling albums too, but I think if you look at, I always tend to look at Priest and Maiden side by side, and I think Iron Maiden had some really cool videos. Yeah. And I think, you know, Iron Maiden outsold Priest throughout the 80s, and you have to wonder, did it have anything to do with that? I don't know, because, yeah, right? So I don't know. And one other thing I wanted to kind of go down to here is, how about some of those like veteran bands that used MTV in the video format to kind of maybe kickstart their career a little bit? And I'm specifically thinking like Aerosmith, Ozzy,
ZZ Top,
David Lee Roth, ZZ Top. And I'm going to throw Whitesnake in here too, because I think I often get many people who lump Whitesnake in with all these other hair bands. And you know what? Other than the fact that they tease the hair and stuff like that just to kind of fit in, their music was never really like that.
No.
And so many people just never really listened to Whitesnake, or like, oh God, I only like the early bluesy years, because then they started putting out those videos, and I'm like, oh Jesus, whatever.
Girl dancing on a car, that's never heard of, right? I mean,
they jumped on that bandwagon, and you know what? It helped them, but they had the music. They had the music to back it up. So it's like, I always kind of like overlooked that. But like, look at like David Lee Roth. I mean, he had that Eat 'Em and Smile album, which was great.
What a good video. Oh, that's
Steve Vai. I mean, on Just Like Paradise, or what was the name of that album?
Yeah,
was it
that
Just
was
Like Paradise?
David Lee Roth.
Eat 'Em and Smile. Yeah,
Eat 'Em and Smile.
Yeah.
Yankee Rose, all that kind of stuff.
Yankee Rose.
But then all of a sudden,
awesome.
Dave took that and started doing these schmaltzy, like Vegas type videos and all that crap. And look where he is today.
I was going to say, don't say David Lee Roth in Vegas.
I know,
that hurts.
Why did you?
We're topical.
Moment of silence.
Yes. Here's my quick rant within a rant. Anybody who's watching this, if you want to go out and absolutely ruin your day, go watch any of the recent David Lee Roth videos from Las Vegas. You will be mortified how bad it is. Anyway, done. That's it.
Yeah, no, I do want to touch on that. Oh my God, don't do it. If you have any respect for David Lee Roth, don't do it. If you liked Van Halen in the 80s, 70s, and 80s, don't do it. You will never be scarred.
I know we weren't going to go on tangent, but he has single-handedly almost ruined his career at this point with those videos. I mean, they're everywhere and they're bad. I mean, okay, back.
Not MTV, but does that count?
Oh, so
ruining
MTV,
your career with a video,
shot videos.
Yeah, so MTV went to what, like late 90s, maybe 96, 97, before they really started
on the air.
No, before they started turning into
videos,
to
reality TV
videos
and all that stuff.
So I mean, you had bands, you had the whole grunge era. I mean, you had Nirvana with doing their video, which is iconic, the video and the song. And you had a lot of those grunge bands, and even some of the early rock stuff that come out of grunge. We're still producing pretty good video. That Tool video, the one that I mean, so there was some pretty good stuff towards the end of them playing videos that was coming out that was groundbreaking. I mean, they were doing some seriously cool stuff with videos at that point. And so I don't think that video now that we're talking about with David Lee Roth qualifies as that, but I think it's almost as damaging as what we just talked about, some of the other bands that put out videos in the MTV era to their career.
You have to consider that social media and the like was non-existent. What we are doing right here was non-existent.
Oh yeah.
So three idiots couldn't go online and blast, God rest his soul, David Lee Roth, man.
We're not doing anything that everybody else is doing, though.
I understand that, but even 15 years ago, it couldn't have been done. It had to go through Spin Magazine. It had to go through, Rock Digest or any of those magazines.
Are we at a point where video killed the performing artist, regardless of what the video is? Because that's basically what we're saying. Is that now, because anybody can videotape anything, these guys go and play concerts and do these tours and engagements, and they just physically can't do it anymore. I mean, Roth is up there looking like he's having a blast. I sound great. Look at me. And then we have the video to prove that, dude, you can't cut it anymore.
Well, but you also have concerts where, people get angry at the crowd and throw stuff back at the crowd, or walk off stage because they don't want to play because somebody's yelling obscenities at them or something like that. And, you're right. The social media buzz kills people at this point, and it's instant this time, though. It's not like where a video came out 2 years after the song did, and everybody's kind of already jamming to the song anyways, and the video goes, whoa, maybe we don't like these guys anymore. It's instant. I mean, when that video came out of David Lee Roth, it was the next morning. I mean, it wasn't like we waited 3 weeks to see it, and he, had 6 more.
Within 24 hours, the whole set was on.
Right. And I think we're at a point now, with this, what have you done for me lately mentality, and this, mindset of, okay, next we can instantaneously now end someone's career based on one person's thought process.
Bingo.
You
And,
can go.
and that's not much different than 30 years ago, where a really bad video like Billy Squires can kill your career. Today, a video on YouTube shot from a handheld device can
Right.
do the same exact thing.
Just the speed at which it dies at this point.
Right.
Yeah, I was just gonna say.
You don't have to wait for the world premiere in 2 weeks on Headbangers Ball. Now it's like world premiere tomorrow morning whenever the kid gets up and loads it onto YouTube.
Right, but I mean, even sadly, even if you go to Europe, Kansas, and they have a bad performance, or the drummer's sick or something, and it gets uploaded, and they were trash. That's the dark side of that people's nastiness nowadays. To instantly rip people, and not that David Lee Roth didn't need to be ostracized for his performance. I'm using it sometimes. Now at least we had leeway. We had a with Billy Squire, we had a buffer. We knew he made good music, and dude just made a horrible video. You kind of laugh it off, but I mean, it did pretty much kill his career. Now it's like, Dave, hang it up, man. You know, now it's so much nastier. It's instantaneous. We can literally go online. When Neil Peart died, you were online instantaneously expressing your sorrow, and that was beautiful. And it matters now. You have to be first with it. If you're not first, you're last, Ricky Bobby. It really has to be. We live in this. We can't focus on anything for any amount of time anymore. So if it's like he had a bad performance, and if he did 100 flawless concerts after that, nobody would care. Nobody would see him, and nobody would hear him, because they wouldn't get posted. Because it's easier to lambaste a guy for a crappy performance. Not that it was good, but it's so much easier and so much faster and so much more attention gets heaped on the bad than the good.
But there is that good side too out there. I mean, have you seen the video where Grohl brings up that kid to play guitar on stage or something with him? There's also going to be those good ones as well that do what else we talked about. That brings, Foo Fighters. I'm not a huge Foo Fighter fan, but things like that make me go, I dig those guys for doing stuff like that. I dig those guys for standing out and being something really good in the environment. And that gives me more of a like for them. So
but are you going to go buy his album because of it?
What's an album?
Yeah.
I don't understand that. What is it?
Sorry. So, but I mean,
album is just a term. It's the format. Now we have formats.
Right.
Album is the recording. Yep.
But I'm not going to listen to David Lee Roth anymore. I'm not going to seek out to see if he did any good performances after that because of that. But
well, I think that the bad stuff seems to linger longer.
Yeah.
I totally agree with you. People are more inclined, because let me tell you something. Since the morning those videos went live, I can't tell you how many people I've run into who are still talking about it.
Yep.
And it's, that's a couple of weeks ago already. Whereas, like, I'll give another example. So, like, the NAMM great show is going on as we speak the last couple of days, and all over social media you're seeing people who are taking videos of, like, Steve Morris jamming with Paul Gilbert and this guitar player playing with it, and it's amazing stuff, and people are like, wow, oh my God, that's so great. But you know what? Once NAMM is over, nobody's gonna be talking to me. They'll wait till next year when it happens live again, then we'll be talking about it again. But yet David Lee Roth and how horrible he's been,
still being talked about,
and we'll still be talking about it a month from now.
Yeah.
So
that's the world I guess we live in, right?
So in perfect music fashion, I'm going to throw a curveball at my brother here. Boy. There's one good thing that I've found that has come out of MTV, and it's a single performance, but I know it's a single performance. And I'll throw this at Pete too, even though he's probably, I think this whole genre of MTV output was later in its career anyways. So, but I would say that even though some of the performances weren't amazing, I would say MTV Unplugged was actually a big gift to music world, a big opening of what people could do with a different feel of their music.
Because in those segments, it was all just about the music.
Right. So I think that was the really only good thing I've ever taken from MTV at this point. At the time, obviously, I was watching the videos too. I sat down, I watched the videos, I enjoyed it because they were, playing rock videos. I liked it. It was fun. But I would say that now, looking back on it, that really the only good thing that it gave us was MTV Unplugged. And obviously the Nirvana one's the one I'm going to go to, even though, Alice in Chains did a really good one. Pearl Jam's was okay. But there was a lot of there's a whole library of people that actually got up there. And like you said,
I mean, the Stevie Ray Vaughan one was excellent.
Yeah, it was
the
amazing.
Kiss one was great.
Even Alanis Morissette did one that wasn't too bad. Stone Temple Pilots one was good.
Man, that was epic too for me.
But I would say that was probably, the one good thing I got from it. But circling back around to the main point, I really do feel that it was definitely, George and I have talked before about rock being dead at this point. But I think that was one of the big turning points of cutting off the people that weren't going to make the cut at that point, because of looks, because of money, because of, selling out, whatever you want to call it at that point. That's my rant.
I think I'll kind of pigtail onto that sort of. I think it ushered in we're in an era now where you have to be both. You have to be talented and pretty. And it ushered, I think before you could be, Robert Plant or, John Bonham, and they saw you on stage. You remember what they looked like in concert, and it was dark and it was epic, and the music, but it was about the music. You could close your eyes and it didn't matter what necessarily they were doing on stage. It was the sound. As long as they sounded amazing, you didn't care. And it's ushered in this genre now of, I think, even like from grunge, because the Soundgardens, the Nirvanas, Alice in Chains, Stone Temple Pilots, they had to be presentable and they had to sound amazing too. And I think that's the ones that stood out still do. The ones that were making music that was worth listening to and you didn't really care what they looked at kind of stayed around. I mean, they've made it, and back to where, ugly is the new cool. Now we're at a point where it was okay to wear flannels and Doc Martens and whatever in the early 90s there, and back to the long hair and so on and so forth. Now it doesn't matter necessarily. We're back to, I think we've actually come full circle to where it doesn't really matter what they look like as long as they sound good.
Because people are looking and listening on these little things. And Absolutely. Does it really matter? Right?
Exactly. And I think it's come full circle where it doesn't really matter as long as the music is good, because they don't have to put out a video now. So I think it's went from not having them, making people famous that shouldn't have been by visual reference, to now it's all about I think it's coming back to about the music again. And we've talked about this too, that there's a lot of great music being made if you just scratch through the surface. And I think people got tired of what was on the surface because it was skin deep, for lack of a better pun. Yeah. We only saw the Aquanet and the spandex, and it's like, okay, their anthems, their party songs or whatever, Pour Some Sugar on Me, when Def Leppard had a lot better music. Okay, it's Rock Me, by Billy
everything
Squier.
Was better than that. Sorry.
Well, yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. And same with Billy Squier. I mean, everything was better than that video. I mean, even the song was great. Just oh dear God, his dance. But you have to.
I made sure to watch that video before we went live on this. I was like, because I watched it a couple months ago. I was like, oh my God, that's even worse than I remember it. Yeah, it's even today, it's worse than I remember it.
Is it as bad as the dancing in the streets with
Yes,
Mick Jagger?
It's worse. Yeah.
David Bowie.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it in a long time, so I want to go back and watch it.
That's not great either, but you know what? It's Bowie and Jagger, so we can.
Yeah, I think Jagger gets a pass on that stuff. Yeah.
Because Jagger can move on stage. He can move on stage.
Absolutely.
Billy Squier should be up there at the microphone with his guitar slung over his shoulder,
Absolutely.
belting it out,
and
not prancing around
Bill.
like a.
Bill, sit here and don't move. You're good.
Yes. So this was a great conversation, and we went off in all sorts of different directions, and we almost went in another different direction right at the end, but I think I'm going to save that for another, because, and I'll lay it out there and we can talk about it. If we want to have a follow-up, we can do that. Is popular music really that good today? But I think what you were getting at, George, is that there's a lot of great music out there that people just don't know about and don't want to go find.
You're just gonna light his fuse and throw it. Is what
exactly.
You're
light fuse and run away. That's
and
it.
then stop recording. Yeah.
Exactly. So, guys, tell us a little bit about where everybody can find you on the web, and throw a little plug to your number 50 show coming up too.
Music Musing feedback at gmail.com if you want to reach out to us. Music Musing _ on Twitter. What's the Instagram, brother? What's that under?
At Music Musing.
Okay, so musicmusing.libsyn.com if you want to find out where our podcast is, but you can find it on pretty much anyone. Stitcher, Google Play, iTunes, TuneIn. You can pretty much, if you can find a podcast, it's probably out there. If not, reach out to us and let us know, and we'll get it out to where it needs to be. Or you can search George or Craig Sybert on any of the social media sites that you've got, and you can find us there, and we'll let you know where it is.
Absolutely.
Oh, 50. Yeah, so our next episode is going to be 50, and we're being cliche, but not, right?
Yeah. We picked 50 musical things that affect us, and it's our podcast, so
yeah.
So
what George said.
No, it's stuff that affects us. 50 episodes, we've been doing it for a couple of years now, and but it still boils down to the music musing feedback at gmail.com. Hit us up, give us ideas, feedback, tell us what you want to hear, tell us what you like, what you don't like, hate mail, good stuff, whatever. We just want the interaction. We don't, it's not about the money or about the fame. That's why we come on Pete's show. And, so that's what it's all about. We want the interaction because we like talking about music. We hope you like listening to us talk about music, and we love talking about music with other people who like talking about music. So that's what it's all about.
And don't forget, if you go onto their website, make sure you check out their library of content. So again, coming up on 50 podcasts, that means there's 49 other ones sitting out there. If you haven't heard them, you should. There's a lot of fun stuff to listen to.
And Pete's on a couple of them.
I am.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, and if you go to the Instagram page, you can click the link in our bio, and it'll take you right to them also. Cool. So.
There you go. Well, we're looking forward to that 50th episode. That should be a lot of fun, and that's a cool topic. So, guys, thanks once again for coming on the show. We appreciate it. Looking forward to having you guys back on again real soon. We should whip up another What If episode soon. I think we're a little overdue to have one of those. So we'll be talking. And everybody, thanks again for joining us. Visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. Of course, we're here on YouTube all the damn time. I swear I'm going to make shirts up one of these days. That's going to be the slogan. So got to get everybody to say it. Did you know, like I did like a little like Christmas episode, and I had my mom and dad on with me, and I got to the end of it, and I was ready for the all the damn time thing. And I said my thing, and then I pointed to Mom, and I wanted her to say it. And she looks at the camera and she goes, "Happy holidays, everybody." I'm like, no, it's not what I wanted you to say, Mom. Come on.
Don't be a mom for once.
I think it's all the damn time. She goes, "Oh, all the damn time." Okay, I'll get it. All right, whatever. Maybe so anyway, guys, we got some real cool stuff coming up this week. More worst to best albums, top 10 songs. We got Chris Allo in the house this weekend. We're going to be doing some really cool stuff. So stay tuned. Make sure you give us a like on Facebook, and make sure you subscribe and tell your friends. So for Craig and George, give a wave. Goodbye, guys. We'll
Thanks,
see
Pete.
you all next time.
See you guys.
Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.